Hi everyone, I'm Luca and together with Martina Giarda we will present our paper that is using modern languages to parse ancient ones, a test on Old English. I will introduce the topic of our paper, then we will explain the methods we follow to carry out our research. Then we will show the results and some specific parsing errors, and then we will draw our conclusions and present our future aims for the project. So, in our paper we tested the parsing performances of a multilingual parser on Old English data using different sets of languages to train the models. So we used some, we trained some models using only support languages that we chose among modern languages, and then we trained other models using modern languages, so the support languages combined with the target language, so the Old English. Then we analyzed more in depth the annotation of some peculiar syntactic constructions, and we tried to provide some plausible linguistic explanation to the error made by the best performing models. Why we choose Old English? So the reasons are basically because we do linguistic research on this language, and also because it was given little attention to the creation of resources to study Old English. In fact, there are only constituency tree banks available for this language, namely the York, Toronto, Helsinki part corpus of Old English prose and the poetic counterpart of this resource. To carry out our research, we follow these steps. So first, we annotated 292 sentences of two prose Old English texts. Then we chose 3 support modern languages, namely German, Icelandic and Swedish. And finally, we used the UU parser to train the models and parse the test set. The texts were annotated following the Universal Dependencies Annotation scheme, and so first we converted the text from the format in which they appear to the CONLLU format. Then we converted the annotation that was provided with the data in the original format to the universal part of speech and features, and we disambiguate them when the annotation wasn't clear. Then finally we annotated the syntax of these sentences.
So Old English is a West Germanic language, classified with Old Frisian and Old Saxon among the so-called Ingevanic languages. It was spoken in England after Anglo-Saxon Jews and Frisians came to the island and settled in it in the 5th century. As far as attestations, they go from the 7th century to conventionally 1066, date of the Norman conquest of England. Some Old English features important to our aims are the nominative-accusative alignment, 4 cases, namely nominative, accusative, dative, and genitive, which could showcase syncretism, 3 nominal classes and 2 verbal main conjugational systems, namely weak and strong verbs. Old English had a relatively free word order and allowed both pre- and postpositions and discontinuous constituents, often in relative clauses. These last 2 points we will see are important in our error analysis. As support languages, we chose 3 modern languages, namely German, Icelandic, and Swedish. And this choice was supported by the fact that these languages do share with Old English some features and belong to the same language family. To train the multilingual models, we selected 60,000 tokens from the 3 tree banks you see here below from UD version 2.11. So namely UD Swedish Stolbanken, UD Icelandic Modern, UD German GSD. You can see on the slide the features shared by Old English and our support languages. And as you can see visually, Icelandic and German are the most similar. And for this reason, we expected them to give better results. Despite being a North Germanic language, Icelandic is the most similar to Old English because it's still the most archaic of Germanic languages. It has prenominal definite determiners, pre- and postnominal attributive genitive, the so-called oblique objects, the presence of verb auxiliary constructions, and the V2. Swedish is also a North Germanic language, but has undergone a process of morphological simplifications. And it nonetheless shares with Old English pre-nominal possessive determiners and the V2. German is a West Romanic language as Old English, and it shares with it pre-nominal definite determiners, pre- and post-nominal attributive genitive, verb final order in subordinate clauses, and both pre- and postposition, and finally the V2. But why didn't we consider modern English? For several reasons, but first of all, because of the loss of nominal and verbal morphology, because of the strict SVO order, which was not found in Old English, and because of the massive influence on the lexicon by French after the Norman conquest. For each one of the combinations of the 4 languages, the target language and the 3 support languages, we trained a model following the methodology described in Mitchell, Madden, and Neve 2019. So we used UU Parser to train the model, 30 epochs. We selected the best epoch according to the LAS on the Old English dev set, and we parsed the Old English test set using the best model. You can find all our data and scripts in our GitHub repository here with the QR code. As you can see from this table, and according to our expectations, Icelandic and German gave the best results. But let's now move on to error analysis. First of all, concerning the Deprel obl, for which, however, no significant patterns of error can be identified. We can see, however, the role of postpositions in the incorrect annotation. All models fail to recognize the postposition on yen, towards, as the postposition governing the pronoun io, them. And this happened several times. Moving on to relative clauses, we can say that most problems in their annotations are due to the great variability in the relative pronouns marking, and they're due to non-projectivity. Concerning variability, we have to say that Old English had an invariant complementizer, the, which is often used to mark relative clauses, but could be omitted. And this is the case where the models fail to recognize relative clauses. An example here, you can see that the relative clause on them well libbad is marked by the prepositional phrase on them and not by the complementizer the. Concerning non-projectivity, we said that Old English allowed discontinuous constituent, and this is the cause of some errors. In the first part of this sentence, you can see that the relative clause is more or less recognized. It should be here on the verb forleden, but is attached to the wrong noun, which should be drumen. So the deep joys, drumen, which corrupted the pharaoh. However, we can say that the models recognize and correctly annotated relative clauses when their antecedent is just before the relative clause, as in the next part of the sentence of the ilkan antimbre de godea yesheo, of the same substance that with this the invariant complementizer. Of the same substance that God created before. We, however, noticed some recurrent errors that the models could have avoided, and these were due to the fact that the generated tree and the annotation of dependency relations do not take into account the part of speech of the tokens. And for these reasons, we corrected the output following these rules you can see in the table. And this correction improved the LAS of the parse sentence by 1%.
To conclude, in our paper we show that the model trained just using data of the target language achieved far better results than the models trained without seeing target language data, and also that Icelandic and German combined better with Old English than Swedish according to the scores reached parsing Old English test data. This was expected, as we mentioned earlier, and also we show that some poor results might be due to the peculiarity of such constructions in Old English. and also that using support languages in combination with the target language to train the models improve the results of the parsing, in particular when support languages are related with the target language or when they share a significant amount of features with the target language. In the future, we would like to have an alternative to a rule-based conversion of the YCOEP tree banks, and also to develop a tool to annotate other Old English texts, which are not included in these resources. And that was all for today. Thank you for your attention.